Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first monthly webinar of the school year. Hope everyone is doing great. Some of you have already started school. That's very exciting. Some of you are still gearing up. Today's webinar is going to focus on data quality. And of course, we will also give you a few other tips and reminders that are pertinent right now at the beginning of the school year. I am Annette Thacker-Bartlett. I am with the OSSE Teaching and Learning and Training team, and I will be joined by Ms. Kathy Ash today, who is a member of the Data Assessment and Research Division on the training team there. If you have any questions along the way, please type them in the question box. First, I'd just like to get a sound check. If you can hear me, if you could just type in the chat box that you can hear me. Great, looks like we're good to go. Okay, first we're going to talk about key data systems and then some very important information about the student enrollment process, including transferring student records into SEDS. Then we'll discuss certain reports and tools that can help you manage your own quality and compliance. We'll discuss briefly data errors and anomalies, as that it's a critical time for those right now as enrollment and students are shuffling around. And then we'll close out with a few reminders and announcements. First, I'm going to turn the time over to Ms. Kathy to talk about key data systems. Take it away, Kathy.
Thank you, Annette. So there are 5 key data systems that are available to the LEA SE POCs to access both the student data and reports. The statewide longitudinal education data system, which we know as SLED, is the warehouse or a comprehensive repository for student data from early learning to post-secondary education. It also provides extensive educational data to schools, the LEAs, and the state to enable better planning, performance projections, trend analysis, stakeholder empowerment, program evaluation, and it then in turn will help you improve the educational outcomes of our DC students. Then, of course, you have the Special Education Data System, which is SEDS. And SEDS is the District of Columbia's system of record for special education data. It also serves as the primary system of record for inputting and updating student information or special education student information and for documenting the service provided. We also have ClickSense, which is a self-service data application that allows the users, actually empowers you to create a range of flexible, interactive visualizations. And with or in ClickSense, you can generate a variety of reports, such as the charter sector attendance report, attendance anomalies, and the SLED enrollment roster assessments. Now, the ClickSense, the LEAs are provided with tokens to access that application. Then, of course, you all are familiar, I'm sure, with the OSSE support tool. That provides a vehicle for the LEAs to contact OSSE for support and technical assistance. The LEA SE POC and the data manager or registrar are the only users who should have access to the OST. And finally, we have the LEA data mapping application. This application provides LEAs with the ability to update your mappings to inform OSSE of any changes in real time. Also, create a historic log of any changes to the data mappings. As well, export information to view a summary of the data mappings for all data collections. Now, this mapping application replaces the Excel data collection template that LEAs have historically used to inform OSSE of where the required data fields exist within the LEA's student information system. If you have questions, please put them in the chat box. We have staff on hand that will be able to provide a response. Now I'm going to turn it, actually we're going to pause a minute for questions on data systems.
We had a question come in about will there be additional trainings on all of these data systems? And the answer is yes. Currently there are some toolkits and resource guides and some recorded webinars for some of the data systems. There will also be more additional training coming up in the next few months for other data systems. So watch for those announcements in the LEA Look Forward. And also, please send us an email letting us know what type of training needs that you have. Let's talk about the student enrollment process. This is a very important time of year to talk about this, as one of the top questions we get here at OSSE multiple times a day at this time of year is, why can't I see my students in SEDS? Why can't I see their records in SEDS? So we're going to talk about enrollment. You're not the school registrar, but you do need to understand just have some background information about what the school registrar needs to be able to do to then let you get your records and SEDS that you need. As you can see here, the data flow, it starts with what your registrar does in your student information system. Then that gets passed over to OSSE, to our ADT server, which then sends it to SLED, which then farms it out to SEDS, TOTE for transportation, and several other downstream systems. So my point in showing you this flowchart is that if something is missing in the student information system, that's going to impede the ability for that information to get all the way down to SEDS and will prevent you from getting those SEDS records in many cases. And also what goes into SEDS does affect TOTE. So just as a reminder, if you have students right now that you're trying to set up transportation, everything in SEDS needs to be accurate with regards to their transportation on a finalized IEP. And the transportation information on a finalized IEP is what gets sent over to TOTE. So keep that in mind. Here is a reminder of the 6 stages of enrollment. Again, you are not the registrar. You don't have to memorize these, but I do want to let you know what you can expect right now with kind of how it goes. The student applies to the school, the LEA accepts the student and they have a slot. Then the student or the parent officially accepts that slot by submitting all of their enrollment information to the LEA. And that's where the registrar picks up in stage 4 that I have highlighted here. Stage 4 is a very important moment because this is when the registrar officially enrolls the student in their school. Now, this is not, they haven't showed up to school yet, but they are officially enrolled. When they actually do show up to school and are physically in attendance, that moves a student from stage 4 to stage 5. And during this time of stage 4, stage 5, you're wanting to get a hold of those special education records so you can plan ahead for the student. For example, maybe they haven't showed up to your school yet, but you want to get that IEP and make sure they get transportation lined up before the first day of school, for example. So this chart is just for your reference, and I'm going to talk more in depth about stage 4 and stage 5. But again, just for your background information, the registrar is putting these type of demographics into the SIS. If any of the required elements are missing, it will prevent the information from getting to OSSE accurately. Also, if the enrollment code is wrong or the entry date, exit date, all this information is required and it needs to be accurate. So if you have any issues, please go see your registrar first and double check all of this information. Again, this is how the information makes it into SEDS. All of these elements need to be provided. Again, this is just for your reference. Now, here's where your job comes into play, making sure that the IEP gets into your hands and into the hands of your teachers and service providers. First, the student enrolls, and the registrar puts their information into the SIS. Then, overnight, that student information system talks to the ADT at OSSE overnight, and so that information shows up the next day. And then the ADT server sends that information to SLED. And then SLED gets together with SEDS every night and they have a little chat. And SLED says, hey, I have Johnny in LEA number 1. And SEDS says, wait a minute, I have Johnny in LEA number 2. And they realize that a student's in one place, but his SEDS records are in another place. So they create this report called Events Not Transferred, which is a list of all the students that are in one school, but their SEDS records are in a different school because they haven't been transferred over yet. So then that list gets put into the OSSE support tool so that you can very quickly and very easily see those students that have SEDS records that you need to request to bring over to your SEDS account. Because the student should be in your SEDS with a white check mark. All your students that get put in your information system go over to SLED and go over to SEDS. So every student, whether or not they're in special ed, is in your SEDS. They just all have white check marks, meaning SEDS doesn't know that any of them might have an IEP at this point. And then I'll remind you how in the OSSE support tool you can request those records. Once you make that request, then OSSE will send them over. And you will see them in SEDS, and now you can assign that student to different caseloads, line up their service providers, work with the teachers, etc. Again, here is an overview of who's in charge of what. The new LEA needs to ask the parent directly if the child has an IEP or has ever been referred for evaluation or is perhaps in the middle of an evaluation. And as a new LEA, you immediately request those. You immediately go into the OST as soon as you possibly can. Technically, you have up to 5 business days, but please don't wait 5 days. As soon as you can, go into the OST and check to see if that student has popped up on your Events Not Transferred report. If not, if they don't pop up there, maybe go check with your registrar to make sure all of the information is correct in the student information system. If you do see the student there, and you know the student is at your school, go ahead, request those records. But then the previous LEA, they come into play. The previous LEA needs to confirm that, yes, in fact, the student has left my LEA. Here you go. Go ahead and have the records. They need to approve that. So don't be a deadbeat LEA and sit around and forget that you need to go approve these transfers. We have a lot of LEAs that request records and they're waiting around because the previous LEA forgets to go confirm that transfer should happen. Now OSSE is going to step in at some point, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Now let's say a different LEA requests you to move records over, but you say, hey, wait a minute, that student is still at my school. Why are they requesting those records? That means there's probably something fishy going on with enrollment, so you need to put a ticket in the OSSE support tool saying, hey, they want these records, but I have the student, what's going on? Now, if you do approve the transfer, OSSE will send those SEDS records over within 2 business days. Again, if you have any questions, type them in the chat box. We have a team of people here from enrollment and data and the SEDS team that can answer your questions. Okay, here we go. Within the OSSE support tool, which all of you should have access to. By the way, if you do not have access to the OSSE support tool and or you have never logged in and looked around, today you need to make that happen. It's a very important time of year to have access to the OSSE support tool. So as a reminder, you're going to get on the OSSE support tool. You're going to see 2 buttons, one to request student record transfers and one to look at the request that another LEA has made that you might need to approve. So it's very simple. You'll see the students listed there that have SEDS records that are enrolled in your school, but those SEDS records haven't transferred over yet. Again, that is the Events Not Transferred report. They're all there. You just click a button to say, yes, I want to request this record. Then the previous LEA, it pops up on their list, and they click, yes, I approve the transfer, and it's a done deal. We make it very easy for you to transfer those records over. You don't have to, drive over to the school and make some photocopies and come back. Now, just a few tips. This is your job at the beginning of the year. Make sure that the parents are being asked after the student is enrolled. We don't want any discrimination against students with disabilities, so you cannot ask this before the child is enrolled. But once the student is enrolled, you ask the parents, do they have any special ed records? Have they ever been referred for evaluation? This is the best source of information to know if you need to go watch for those records. And of course, if the parent does not tell you the truth, if they do in fact have an IEP, but the parent says they do not, you will still see that student pop up on your report in the OSSE support tool. So that is your backup way to know that the student is in special ed. Now, until you get that IEP and get everything settled, you should provide comparable services in the interim. So again, it's very important. This time of year, you should be checking the OSSE support tool every single day to see what kind of records requests you need to make or you need to approve. Now, here's where OSSE comes into play to help expedite the process. As I mentioned before, sometimes the previous LEA sits around and does not approve that transfer, and so you are waiting. We do not want you to have to wait very long. That is because it's very important that you get those records as soon as you can so you can start serving the student and implementing the IEP. So there's a few new steps that OSSE is going to take to step in and help you get those records as quickly as possible. However, I would like to note this does not replace your responsibility to check the OSSE support tool every single day to see if there's records you need to request or to approve. It does not replace that process. This is just OSSE stepping in if too much time has passed to help move things along. Now, some of these new processes, I should call them additional processes because they're not replacing the normal way for you to request the records. Out of these new processes, some of them are still being built out in the system. So once I'm going to explain them to you, and then once they go live, OSSE will communicate that with you when they're going to go live. So scenario 1, if a student reaches stage 5 enrollment, OSSE will automatically initiate a records transfer. Now, as a reminder, stage 5 is when the student physically shows up to your school. Some people like to refer to it as butt in the seat. But more formally, it's when the student shows up to your school to begin receiving educational services. And the registrar will then move them to stage 5 because now they're attending. Now, this is being built out in the system, so OSSE isn't doing this quite yet, but as soon as this is built out in the system, this means we will automatically move those records over so that you can begin serving the student IEP services immediately. Another scenario, this is backing up to stage 4. Remember, stage 4, they're not attending your school yet. Maybe school hasn't even started yet. But stage 4 is when your registrar has officially enrolled them in your school, but they haven't shown up to your school yet. And you want to plan ahead. You want to see if you can get service providers in place, transportation in place. So we do allow records to be transferred during stage 4, even though the student hasn't shown up on your doorstep yet. But there's certain precautions we take to make sure we're not sending the records over inappropriately. So what's happening right now is when a student is enrolled at your LEA, if they're enrolled properly, they will show up in your SEDS with a white check mark. So that's the first thing that we look for, is to make sure they're active in your SEDS with a white check mark. And then we look to see, are there SEDS records at another LEA that have not yet moved over to the current LEA? Because if all the records have already moved over, then this process is a moot point. So if there's other records that need to move over, that's another requirement. And then we look to see, has the current LEA requested the records? And the old LEA is being a deadbeat LEA and forgetting to approve that. Or maybe the current LEA is not on the ball at all and has not gone and requested those records. That's not good because the student needs to get their services. And we can't have the LEA waiting, just ignoring the fact they need to request these records. So what OSSE does is once the student gets to stage 4, once they're enrolled and everything's correct, OSSE will wait 4 days, and then they will go ahead and initiate the transfer of records without waiting for the LEA to do so or without waiting for the old LEA to approve it. We'll initiate that on the 4th day, which means by the 5th business day, those records should be in SEDS available for you. Now again, this is not an excuse for you to not do your duty to go into the OSSE support tool every day and request those records. This is just a backup method in case the new LEA or previous LEA is not fulfilling their responsibilities. Now, some of you might be thinking, what about duplicative enrollment? What if the student is enrolled in 2 different schools? Which school is going to get the records? Well, OSSE looks to see which LEA most recently registered the student, because sometimes a parent will take their kid and get registered at one school, then they change their mind and they go register at a different school. So the one that was most recently registered the student, we will wait 4 days from the time of being enrolled just to make sure they're not going to change their mind again, and then we will move those records over. Now, this process is happening now as we speak. Coming soon, an additional process has to do with My School DC. Several LEAs are part of the My School DC common enrollment form, where the parent provides a lot of information. And so the My School DC expedites the ability for the parent to be able to say, hey, I want you to, have all this information about the student. So we're working on this here at OSSE, that when a student reaches stage 4, so when they are enrolled at your LEA, and when the information in My School DC is accurate, and that means the My School DC says the student is at the same LEA that SEDS shows the student being at with the white check mark, when that's a match, then we don't have to wait 4 days. We can immediately initiate the records transfer so that it'll show up on the 2nd business day. So that's going to be a great way to expedite getting those records to you. But again, this is not current yet. We will notify you about the date when this is going to go into effect. And again, I've said this many times, this does not excuse your responsibility to go into the OSSE support tool every day and check that list and see if you need to request them. That's the fastest way to do it, is for you to request them as soon as you know you're going to get that student. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is managing data quality and compliance. So, best practice for you, another one of your fun jobs as the LEA SE POC, is to be overseeing data quality and compliance with regards to special ed. Now, Kathy talked earlier about some of the data systems. We have SLED, we have CLIC, all that stuff, and there will be additional trainings more in depth for those. And we make these for you, so you can plan ahead. So take advantage of them. I've showed this to you before, but if you are new or you need a refresher within SLED, which you should all have access to, there's tons of different reports that can help you. It can help you see the list of all your special ed kids and the levels they're at. It can help you see which kids are duplicatively enrolled. It can help you track your timeliness with IEPs. There's just a whole wealth of reports here. I'm just going to point out how you get to that. When you log into SLED, you're going to look under reports and you will see the Enterprise reporting system, kind of like Star Trek. Think of the Enterprise. Then within that, you're going to see a category of SEDS reports, and those SEDS reports, is what you want to look at, because that has to do with special education. Now, within the SEDS reports, there's all kinds of fun things. You have that events not transferred report. That should sound familiar because that same report is also imported to the OSSE support tool so that you can easily request records transfers. You have the LEA Performance and Planning report, that summary report, list of students, not in proactive, not in stars, just different things to do with enrollment issues. These reports can give you and your registrar some insights as to what issues might be happening there. One of our favorite reports that we strongly encourage you to use is the LEA Performance and Planning report. It shows your performance and timeliness in the past on IEPs and evaluations, and it helps you prepare for the future by showing you how many kids are coming up soon to have their IEP or evaluation redone. And if you click the little icon, you can see a report, a guide that can explain this report to you in case you find it a little bit cryptic. Okay, so again, this table is just for your reference. I'm not going to read everything on this table, but this gives you a little more information about 3 of our favorite reports in SLED that we highly recommend that you look at least on a weekly basis, just depending on the time of year, what makes sense. The Planning and Performance report, definitely every week throughout the year. Events not transferred report, definitely every week throughout the year, and every day during this beginning of the school year time. But again, that's in the OSSE support tool. And now you might be wondering, how do I get access to SLED? If you are new, or if you transferred to a different LEA. I know there's always staff members that change to a different LEA each school year, so you're going to have to get a new SLED account with your new LEA and inactivate the old one. So send an email to sled.info@dc.gov to request training, and they will let you know when they can give you training and then give you access. And of course, when you log in, you're always going to be required to acknowledge, the first time you log in, you have to acknowledge the FERPA requirements and agree to those terms with privacy of student records. Okay, that's enough with SLED. Let's talk about CLIC. Within CLIC, which hopefully you've all been trained in. If not, you should. CLIC trainings will be coming soon, so watch for those announcements. Within that is the Special Education Backlog report. We have to report to the federal government to show that we are conducting student evaluations on time. So this backlog report goes into detail about those evaluations. If you want to take a look at the backlog report for your LEA, you can navigate there through SLED, or you can take the shortcut to go straight there through this URL right now. And within CLIC, there is all kinds of applications. And what your role is will depend on which applications you can access in CLIC. So this is just an overview to show you that this can be a great tool for you. Here's an example of a part of the report you could take a look at for trends on your backlog of overdue evaluations. And you can see over time your progress. So this could be great to show how you, maybe you struggled with timeliness before and now you're doing a lot better, or it can flag for you that maybe this is something your LEA needs to work on. And this is exciting and new. As you know, the Related Services Management Report in SEDS sometimes struggles to be completely accurate because of the different calculations that are affected by non-school days, holidays, or when a student is absent, etc. So I'm very excited to announce that a new and improved RSMR is going to be available very soon within CLIC. And we will provide you a separate training on how that works. But I've seen a preview, and I can tell you I'm very excited because it's going to be so much clearer and more accurate than the RSMR available through SEDS. And here's a little sneak peek. For example, look at this amazing dashboard. It's going to really break it down and take into account when the provider attempted to do the service, but the student was absent. It's going to take into account if it's only a 4-day week instead of a 5-day week. It's going to give you visuals on which type of students services. You can even click to find out, to go see all the comments for each service all in one place. It's just going to be, it's really great. So I'm very excited. It will be launched by the end of August, and we will have training on that sometime in September. But you don't have to wait for the training to start using it, because a lot of it is very intuitive, and I think you're going to find it very helpful. Okay, and our last section before we hit the reminders and announcements is just to talk about data errors and anomalies. I'm going to switch it back over to Kathy for this section, and then I will wrap up with reminders and announcements.
Okay, thank you, Annette. As Annette shared, there are quite a few new things on the horizon that are designed to, assist you in your role as the LEA SE POC. One of the things that we're doing in an effort to report consistent and timely data to stakeholders is we've consolidated all of the demographic, enrollment, attendance, and special education data errors and anomalies. This report will be available in SLED and CLIC. Each error and anomaly has a suggested resolution path, and it will indicate whether or not it impacts the enrollment audit and or child count data collection process. Defined for you will be the errors and anomalies. For the error, what an error means is the data entry input by the LEA is incorrect or invalid based on one or more of the following premises. The data entry does not align with the historical authoritative data OSSE has established in the category within the LEA membership tracker. The data entry is not a permitted value, and the data entry does not align with a data standard defined by OSSE in the data collection template. An anomaly is where the data entry that deviates from what is standard, normal, or expected, and possibly incorrect. The report will display a flag to alert you to ensure the entry is correct. There's a child count exclusion, and this is an indication that the error will lead to the student's record being excluded entirely from the child count roster. So you want to pay close attention to these reports. The enrollment audit exclusion is an indication that the error will lead to the student's record being excluded entirely from the enrollment audit roster. There are 5 types of errors. That's the special education anomalies, the attendance errors, the enrollment errors, and the enrollment anomalies. The implications of the errors and anomalies: for the error, the data must be remedied prior to the student's entry on the child count roster and on enrollment audit. Failure to remedy the errors has potential funding implications if not addressed, and we've shared this in all of the trainings repeatedly. So we want to make sure that you remedy the errors so that it does not impact your funding. It also may impact accurate and timely downstream data submissions, including attendance data. For the anomaly, it may not present a technical issue, and it does not have funding implications. Now, the required actions for errors and anomalies. For errors, the action steps in the suggested resolution path must be completed for the error to be removed from the report. Full resolution of the error will remedy potential funding issues if the resolution is completed in a timely fashion. Again, full resolution of the error will remedy potential funding issues if the resolution is completed in a timely fashion. With respect to the anomalies can also be removed from completing the resolution by completing the suggested resolution path. Because anomalies may represent accurate information, full resolution of anomalies is not required. However, Completion of the resolution path is required to remove anomalies from the error report. Now we're going to have announcements and reminders.
Thanks, Kathy. All right, wrapping up. First, thank you for being here today. And when you registered, it should have signed you up for all 10 webinars throughout the school year. If you want one of your colleagues to sign up because they're going to be sharing some of your responsibilities with you, please pass them along this registration link. Next month, we are going to focus on child count, and in October, we're going to focus on monitoring and compliance. And then based on your feedback, we will set the curriculum for the rest of the training series throughout the year based on hot topics of what you might need more in-depth training on. We want these monthly webinars not just to be a repeat of the same thing over and over, but to really go a little deeper on certain things that relate to your responsibilities with a different topic and emphasis each month. Now, for those of you that are new, or you are not new as the LEA SE POC but would like a refresher and are still not 100% there with all of your duties and responsibilities, we invite you to attend our LEA SE POC orientation. We've already had 2 sessions this summer, and some of you came. It was great to see you. The next session is next Friday, and then we have our last session halfway through September in case there's new POCs that jump on board at their school in September. So register for that. If you're interested in coming, it's a 3-hour session. Now, on the training site, just going to go show you how to register for training. So right now I'm going over, when you see the advertisement and you click the link, like in the look forward, when you see a training advertisement for anything by our team, it's going to take you to a page that looks like this, where it has all the trainings listed. The in-person trainings are separated from the online webinar trainings, and it will show what's coming up for the next 30 days. You can click to go see a list of all of them if you want to see beyond 30 days. I do want to point out that one of these is titled wrong at the moment. We're trying to fix that. It says SEDS training for LEA representatives. It's actually not SEDS training. This is the orientation for new LEA special ed points of contact. So it should say new LEA SE POC orientation, but this has a wrong title. So it's not actually a SEDS training. But what is coming up later, you can see here on September 23rd, is a SEDS Train the Trainer. There's a few other trainings coming that I want to talk about in a minute, but I just want you to see this registration page so that when you come here, it's more clear what's, and it's nice because you can see all the trainings in one place. You can see what's coming up, and this is where you would click to then go register. Okay, back to the slides. So again, we have not just that orientation, but we also have some optional trainings that we recommend. SEDS Train the Trainer. In your role, you are responsible for training all your staff on SEDS or delegating that responsibility to one of your colleagues or working together to provide training to your staff. Now, if you come to SEDS Train the Trainer, we will talk through this with you, the best way to train your staff, help you get a little more comfortable with some of the tricky issues, and just really empower you to then go back to your school and train others. So bring your colleague if you share this training responsibility with another person. We have 3 dates coming up, and I showed you where to go register for those. We'll make sure those, all the registration links haven't been posted yet. For the first one in September, that's posted, and please look for the announcement and the LEA Look Forward when these other trainings get posted. We also have the related services provider, SEDS Train the Trainer. This is a special training where we only focus on issues in SEDS, the parts of SEDS that a related service provider would use, because what they do in SEDS is unique to what everybody else does in SEDS. So what you can do is you can select one of your experienced related service providers to come to this training, and it's a Train the Trainer, and then they can go back to your LEA and they can train other related service providers on how to use SEDS. So this is a great resource. You can come if you want, but it is highly recommended to send a designated related service provider who's already experienced in SEDS. And we have a couple sessions scheduled. Again, watch for the official registration links in the Look Forward if they're not up yet. Or actually, you can just go straight to that page I showed you on the internet and see all the trainings coming up. And the LEA Look Forward newsletter, if you did not get this, you need to subscribe today. There's often announcements in there that relate to you or that you should share with your staff. For example, there might be a training coming up on teaching the Common Core to students with disabilities. Maybe you want to pass along that announcement to some of your special ed teachers so that they can come. So follow the instructions on this slide to sign up, and that comes out every Wednesday. And you don't have to wait to get the email. You can always go see the newsletters posted on the website at the URL listed below. And one last announcement. OSSE is working to build up a DC Educator talent pool. And I'm announcing this to you because you might know of some teachers or administrators or specialists that you would like to nominate to be in this talent pool. This talent pool is going to be considered for statewide and national educator awards, but also we might tap this talent pool, different parts of it, to come to focus groups or community practice, or to be on a committee to select other teachers for awards and things like that. So if you have someone you'd like to recommend, there's a nomination form you can fill out, but I also encourage you to share this with your principals or heads at school in case they have someone they'd like to nominate. All right, we have reached the end of the webinar, and here are your homework assignments. Make sure that you and your staff have access to the right data systems. You need the OST, you need SLED, you need CLIC, you need SEDS, and then a lot of your staff need SEDS access. And so you're the one that can create those SEDS accounts for them. And if you have trouble, of course, submit a ticket in the OSSE support tool. And then get to know those data systems, get to know SLED, get to know those reports I featured in the enterprise reporting system. Look at those reports daily to make sure things are accurate. Sign up for the Look Forward. And of course, we hope to see you at future relevant trainings. If all else fails, submit your question in the OSSE support tool. Now, if for some reason you don't have access to the OSSE support tool, you should email us today and request that access. The email for our data training team is osse.dartraining@dc.gov. Again, that's osse.dartraining@dc.gov. We will stay on the line to continue to answer questions in the chat box for the next several minutes. And the rest of you, have a great start of your school year, and we will see you online next month on September 21st. And we'll also send you a follow-up email today with the link to the recording so that you can listen again or pass it along to colleagues. Thank you. Have a great